What a showdown over congressional redistricting. Governor Braun taking heat from the White House, the head of the Senate avoiding reporters.
Hey, Senator Bray, would you just answer a couple questions?
And one lawmaker the victim of a dangerous swatting incident. All of it seems to have reached a boiling point. Thanks for joining us for this special edition of Crossroads Politics here on WTHR+. I'm Dustin Grove. Want to bring you up to speed on what's happened over the last few days. The big moment, of course, came Friday afternoon when Senate President Pro Tem Rod Bray announced he would not convene the Senate next month for a session to consider redrawing the congressional maps simply because there are just not enough votes. Now, this is something the White House has been pushing for months, for Republican states like Indiana to redraw the maps, to try and turn their Democratic House seats Republican for next year's midterm elections. The governor called a special session, but Senator Bray said they just don't have enough support in the Senate chamber, so they're not meeting. President Trump is now blasting Governor Braun and lawmakers for it. In a post on Truth Social, he said he's very disappointed, specifically calling out State Senator Greg Good and Senate Leader Rod Bray. Even Governor Mike Braun is now taking heat from the White House. In the president's social media post, he said, quote, "Governor Mike Braun perhaps is not working the way he should to get the necessary votes. Considering Mike wouldn't be governor without me is disappointing," end quote. Braun said in a post today he had a great call with the president and says state legislators need to show up for work and take a public vote for fair maps. This week, two state senators have invites to the White House to meet with Trump's team to talk about redistricting, among them State Senator Jean Lysing, who we spoke with on Friday. She told us she would not support redrawing the maps, and one of her main reasons is that her constituents, she says, overwhelmingly don't want it.
I'm doing what I've been sent to the Senate to do, and that is to represent the people in my 7 counties. And clearly, when you have those kind of percentages, 94% to 6%, I mean, what does that mean other than you best be doing what your constituents think you should do?
Senator Lysing has already said she will not change her mind and declined that White House invite. Republican Senator Aaron Freeman also got an invitation to the White House. He does plan to go. Now to that dangerous swatting incident just hours after President Trump criticized State Senator Greg Good, who represents Indiana's 38th district. Good and his family appeared to be the target of a swatting incident. Just before 8 o'clock last night, he shared a post on social media. That post said Vigo County Sheriff's deputies were called to his home for a domestic violence emergency that was not real. And police confirmed it was a fake email prank, also known as swatting. So one of the big questions out there right now is redistricting over in Indiana? Or can this still somehow get done? And what are the repercussions for the lawmakers who basically told President Trump, no thanks, we're just not going to do this? I talked with our political analyst, Laura Merrifield Wilson, about it. What do you make of this whole situation?
Well, I think you're dealing with a difficult decision, the consequences and the fallout, certainly, of that decision. The state senator, President Pro Tem Bray, announced on Friday that he just simply did not have the votes and that the state Senate and the House would not be pursuing redistricting any further. This obviously upset Governor Braun, obviously upset President Trump, and I think you are seeing some of those repercussions play out. But at the end of the day, the state legislature is responsible for redistricting, and they're solely responsible for whether or not we go through with that process once the governor had declared that special session. So not having the numbers in terms of the math made sense. There's no point to reconvene if you don't see any movement, and I suspect that's exactly what Senator Bray was referring to.
We saw Governor Braun come out with another statement on social media today, essentially saying, do your job, get in there, let's make the vote public. But there's really only so much the governor can do, right? I mean, he can call a special session, but he can't force them to vote.
Exactly. And the governor has done everything he can do at this point. He had said several weeks ago he wouldn't call a special session unless he knew the votes were there. And then he ultimately called the special session a matter of days after the first time Senate President Pro Tem Bray announced that he didn't have the votes in the Senate. So we really have seen the limitations of power in terms of what Governor Braun can do with regards to redistricting. He's obviously a big proponent. He would want to do this on behalf of President Trump, who's been outspoken in the process and wanting to see Indiana redraw those congressional districts. But clearly the numbers are not there in the state Senate. And, regardless of whether the president wants to see it happen or the governor wants to see it happen, if the state Senate is looking at the math and they know they will not be able to pursue redistricting, it'd be a horrible waste of money and time to bring everyone together, ultimately to have the same outcome you'd have if you didn't have them there in the first place.
These senators that the president is calling out by name, that certain groups are calling out by name, what kind of repercussions do they face, you think?
Well, President Trump has called for them to have primary challengers, and I think that'd be a very fair expectation as a consequence of this. That said, I don't think having competition is necessarily a bad thing. A lot of times with incumbents, they would prefer not to have anyone run against them. It makes re-election very easy, but it's good for voters to see different ideas and perspectives. In Indiana, the way our districts are drawn, the general election is not likely to be very competitive for most of these races, so it will be at the primary level. But for those incumbents, they can speak and listen to their constituents. Many of them did cite the fact that a majority of the people they heard from opposed redistricting, and that's part of why they ultimately changed and issued an opinion saying they don't support redistricting. And there are a lot of other benefits that incumbents have if they're focused on key issues, what they've done to deliver for the district, and how they've best represented constituents. So just having that primary challenge in and of itself is not a end of career move for a lot of these representatives. I think we've also seen some of the more intimidating and certainly more concerning tactics when you look at Senator Greg Good and the swatting that happened at his home. Some of those things I think are not to be anticipated or expected. I think it's absolutely horrible when we're talking about threats of political violence or intimidation, but it's obviously been a consequence of this issue now too.
I was talking with a political strategist this morning who said he thinks there is still time for a special session to take place. Getting senators publicly in favor over the next few weeks is important to make it happen. You don't have a crystal ball, but based on what you know and having your finger kind of on the pulse of things, what do you think about that?
They certainly could do it. The December 1st through 12th is probably still cleared off in legislators' schedules. That's when they were anticipating to meet and discuss redistricting. I think politically, though, it's a lot more complicated than that. Is when you've issued this kind of statement, it is a mic drop in terms of pursuing a policy. And we're coming up to Organization Day tomorrow. So a lot of the legislators probably want to focus on their agenda items, the policies they care about, and what they really want to see happen in January when the state legislature comes back in full session.
Our State House reporter Emily Longnecker is also working on all of these developments. Here's her latest story from Monday evening.
A day before Indiana lawmakers are set to lay out their legislative priorities on Organization Day, Governor Braun said they had another job to do, posting on X on Monday. Quote, Indiana state legislators must show up for work and take a public vote for fair maps to counter the gerrymandering in California and Illinois. Braun went on to say, quote, but the Indiana State Senate is hiding behind closed doors and refusing to even bring redistricting to a vote. Braun's statement comes a day after President Trump called Republican Senate Majority Leader Rod Bray a rhino on Truth Social. Monday morning, Bray and other legislative leaders spoke at the Indiana Chamber's annual legislative preview breakfast.
Nice to be with you all today. Obviously, this is a strange build-up to the legislative session, but we're going to working through that to talk about some things that aren't redistricting. We might get into that a little bit today, which is fine.
But the topic didn't come up again. Bray and Republican House Speaker Todd Houston left when the breakfast was over without taking questions. Democratic Senate Minority Leader Shelley Yoder addressed the governor's post.
We show up for work. What's being asked of us was unprecedented, and folks took several long months to listen to their constituents, and again and again and again. Hoosiers made their voices very loud and very clear. They do not want their congressional maps redrawn.
While Bray has said the Senate does not have the votes to support redistricting, a spokesperson for the House has said the votes are there. But Republican House Speaker Todd Houston has yet to say what lawmakers in the House now plan to do after Bray's announcement this past Friday that the Senate would not convene to take up the issue. Monday afternoon, Republican State Representative Craig Haggard, who's running for Congress in the 4th District, urged leaders in both chambers to convene and vote. In a statement, Haggard said in part, quote, I commend the efforts of those who have said publicly where they stand on this crucial national issue, but we should have every vote heard and seen in a public setting by voting on it to remove the fog of backroom votes and closed-door meetings. Monday, another Republican Senator, Blake Dorio, came out publicly against redistricting. His announcement comes on the heels of invites to some senators to come to Washington this week. Friday, 2 senators confirmed to 13 News they were invited to the Oval Office. Republican Senator Jean Lysing, who has come out against redistricting, says she declined. Republican Senator Aaron Freeman, who has not said where he stands on redistricting, says he accepted the invitation.
And that's the latest. We'll be sure and update you as soon as we learn of anything new. For now, for all of us here at 13 News, I'm Dustin Grove. Thanks for watching Crossroads Politics.